Hey, welcome back to another What I'm Reading, what is in my library. So since I last made a video, which was probably roughly a week ago, I have finished 2 books. The book that I was reading in the last video, Crazy Love You by Lisa Unger, and then a new book that I had checked out from the library. And so I'm going to just talk a little bit about those 2 books and then how I found books, or how I find books, and how I found this particular series of books. Even though my library book had nothing to do with that series, it just happened to be something that I was able to check out at the library at that time. So let me just talk a little bit about Crazy Love You. Crazy Love You is by an author named Lisa Unger, and it was published, well, first of all, it's part of a series, and the series is called The Hollows. And one thing that I like about this particular series is it doesn't necessarily focus on just a certain set of characters. You have reoccurring characters, but it's not so centralized on those characters that you don't know what's going on. I actually jumped into this series with book number 3. Completely, I did not know that book number 3 was part of a series. I just was looking specifically at this author. And so here's the roundabout way that I started reading these books. So I jumped in at In the Blood, and In the Blood was phenomenal. It was a great book. Usually with psychological thrillers, somewhere around 70% through the book, because Kindle gives you that little percentage, I get it. Like, I know what's going down. I completely get it. In the Blood had some definite twists, and I didn't get it until a little bit later on. And honestly, the very end of that book, I read the last line and I stopped. Like, I had to pause. It was like, damn, like, wow. Speechless. That moment where you're just, yeah, it was that good. And I was so sad that that book was over. So I went on Scribd, and I didn't go on Scribd. I found In the Blood on Scribd after looking up the author. I went on the author's website and found out then that this was a whole series of books called The Hollows. And The Hollows is supposed to be this place about 100 miles outside of Manhattan, so kind of like the area that I grew up in. I tend to think upstate New York, but it could be anywhere. But 100 miles outside of Manhattan, and strange things kind of happen in The Hollows. The book that I just finished reading was number 4 in the series. As soon as I was done with In the Blood, I had to look up, what else is out there, what else has this author written, and I found out that this was a series. So then I went back to the beginning, and the first book that she wrote is called Fragile. Again, excellent, excellent book, and it was published in 2010. So I know what you're thinking. You're like, how are you finding books from 2010 that speak to you, that you're just discovering now? So what could be happening to a lot of people is there are great books out there. They're not on the New York Times bestseller list, or it's not something that your friends are currently talking about, because this book, Fragile's 10 years old. And so, how else were you going to find it? So here is how I sometimes track down books and find books to read if they tend to be older, or why I was looking specifically for Lisa Unger as a writer. She appeared in a list that was I think it was the best crime novels of 2019, I believe. And her novel, this was it. I will try to link the article down below. These are all excellent books. Yes, okay. So this was an article from Crime by the Books, 12 Best Crime Novels of 2019. So, by Abby Endler. It's on my Pocket. I saved it in my Pocket app, which is also another great app that I could definitely write about. So I came down here and it was the September choice for best book, and it was called The Stranger Inside. And the article states that the reader is taken inside the mind of a villain with terrifying authenticity, surviving the fallout of a brutal crime, following the survivors, and that's from the actual article. So I looked for this particular book in the library, and it's still on wait list. Like, I'm still on the list for the wait list. But it got me intrigued about this particular author. And so Lisa Unger is the author of The Stranger Inside. Because I read this article that highlighted a new book that she wrote that I couldn't get my hands on immediately. I mean, technically I could have bought it, but if I can find it for, less, I tend to. Teacher life and all of that. And so in looking up The Stranger Inside from this article, I found that she had written these other books. Then I went on to Scribd, and the third book, In the Blood, is the one that spoke to me, and I was like, okay, I really want to, I'm going to try this book. Didn't know it was part of a series. Realized it was part of a series, then I went back to the beginning. Crazy Love You is book number 4. So now I've read 1 through 4 of these books, which is how I got here. Crazy Love You, I liked because it veers off from, it's still a psychological thriller. It's still within my genre, but there were things about it that are outside of my genre that is just so un-me, things that I'm not really interested in. Maybe things that I had previously been interested in as a child and then just changed. And I can explain a little bit of that. There's a supernatural element to this book, and that's not my thing. But I stuck with it. I'm so glad I stuck with it because it turned out to be a really great book. Here's my next dilemma. The next book in the series is The Whispering Hollows, and it's not found on any of my devices. It's not, the library doesn't have it, the Scribd app doesn't have it. I would have to purchase it. So I'm thinking it over, but it really, from the description, falls outside of that box of what I like. And so I've loved all of the other books in the series, even this last one that had this supernatural quality to it. And I've had other books like that. Jennifer McMahon's books, definitely, I'm intrigued by them. I really like them. But again, it's not, I'm not into things necessarily with ghosts or the supernatural. This one happens to focus on a psychic. Not really within my religious toolbox, which I know is odd. People ask me about that all the time. Like, what is a Christian girl doing reading psychological thrillers? And I read them for entertainment value, not, not because I'm a closet serial killer or psychopath. So I find it interesting, knowing full well that it's fiction, and some people might have a problem with that, but that's where I am, and that's what I do. But the world of the supernatural and psychics and ghosts, that's really outside of my, just not what I'm really interested in, not what I want to read about. So I'm conflicted. I don't know if I'll purchase the Whispering Hollows book or if I will just continue on. So now I'm reading the last book in the series because, like I said, you don't have to read them in in an order, and I feel very confident that I can skip the book, The Whispering Hollows, and move straight on to Ink and Bone. And I do think that there's some psychic stuff going on there. I'm just sort of I don't know, like I'm gonna give this one a try. And if this one works out for me and I'm really, really into it, then I will go back and probably purchase the Whispering Hollows text, just so I can say that I've read the full gambit of the stories. She also has a lot of stand-alone stories as well, and I think I might branch off into some of those, depending on, again, I think Scribed has a bunch of them, and the library has some. Speaking of the library, something else that I read during the break, like during this week, we've got Woman on the Edge by Samantha M. Bailey. And that one, again, 70% of the book, I had it, I knew it. If you do choose to read this book, it's a very good book. And if you do choose to read this book, just as you read, I should insert a picture of my old headshot from when I was like 25. And I would be Tessa, because I'm 5'2", 95 pounds. I had hair like down to my waist. I would be a perfect Tessa back in the day. So definitely a character that I identified with all the way till the end. Maybe all the way to the end. But I do highly recommend that book. Also, it takes place in Chicago, and one of the protagonists, Nicole, which was my roommate's name in college, went to Columbia College, which is where I went for the first, until I transferred out here for pilot season back in the day. So, I mean, a lot of little things, like I could picture all the different places, and I knew where people were living, and, you know, just talking about the dorms at Columbia College, like I can remember living on the 11th floor. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. I did figure it out kind of early-ish, but I'm very proud of myself when I do that, because again, I'm not creative. I could never write one of these books, and yet at the same time, I'm able to figure out the plot, so maybe you never know. Anyway, tip: how to find good books. Look up best, and then put in your genre of choice. Best young adult fiction of 2019. Usually go back a year, you know, it's 2020, so, or best psychological thrillers of 2020. Best romance novels of 2020. And then see what's on that list, obviously, but then look up those authors. Go into your Libby app, go into Scribed, go into Kindle, and look up those authors. See what else, if something speaks to you and you think it looks like a really good book, obviously get it and read it. But just know that there might be other options out there, especially if you're going the library route, where you're looking for things that are at your fingertips in a moment's notice and that could potentially be free to you. Sometimes libraries don't get the brand new books right away. They're still getting books, especially digital books, so they're constantly replenishing their stock. So continue to look in your library app. But if that author wrote something that spoke to you once and you're interested, I bet they wrote something that spoke to you more than once and you would be interested. So hunting down good books, look for the top 10, top 20, top whatever within your genre, and then research those authors. Because when you find authors that you like, it's like forming a friendship. You feel like Ruth Ware, Gillian Flynn, Sarah Bailey, Angie Marsden, there's so many books that I've found that I love in authors, and I could just be here forever talking about that. But that is my best advice to you. So find the top, download those books if that is what appeals to you and it's available. But if you're still looking and you still need a free or, reduced package price, go look at things they've written in the past, and you might find hours worth of entertainment.